Okay, this video is for people that are wondering how to do vertical stripes on a loom. The process is really simple, and once you see what I do, you're going to be like, really? It's that simple? Now, what you have to decide is, do you want the brim to be a solid color or to be the starting of the vertical stripes? So that'll be up to you. I'm going to actually start in right as if we're going to do the brim as a vertical stripes as well. You know how you fold the brim up to make it. So I'm going to immediately go right into how to do the vertical stripes. So grab yourself whatever loom you want to use, two strands, two different color yarns. I've got a green and a yellow that I'm going to use. Now, typically, this is a Red Heart brand. Typically, because of the weight of it only being, let me see if I can find out what the weight of it is. It's in size 4, medium 4. I would probably have 2 strands of the green and 2 strands of the yellow, but for the sake of this video, I'm actually just going to use 1 strand of each, just to make it a little easier for you to see what I'm doing and not get all complicated on the strings. So what you're going to do is you're going to have both your strings there. You're going to put them both on your loom. So you're going to do a slip knot of the green, and usually people use the point here as your starting peg. So go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the one behind it. So it's going to be on the one behind it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And now I'm going to take my yellow and do the same thing. Get my slip knot, and I'm going to put this one pretty much on that same loom, or same hook. So they're both on the same one. Now what you have to decide is how wide you want your vertical stripes to be of each color, and what stitch you want to do. I'm keeping it simple with a simple E-wrap stitch for now. You're going to change it up. I mean, if you're using 1 strand of each, you may want to do a tighter stitch or a chunky stitch, which means you're just going around the loom more before you knit over. But to keep it simple, just to give you the basic idea of what you're going to do, I'm only using 1 strand and I'm only using the E-wrap. So what you're going to do is decide which way you want to do it. So if I want my vertical stripes to be 2 and 2 and 2, you know, basically 2 pegs width, which means I'm going to take whatever color I want first and wrap 2 pegs. Leave that alone. Grab the second one that you want to do, skip those 2, and go to the next 2 that you want. Okay? Then go back to the other color you have, do the next 2, then the yellow again, or whichever color you're using, and do the next 2. So that's all you're going to do is work your way around the loom. And what basically this vertical stripes is going to do, and you will probably get tangled, I've done that before, basically, because you're not going to be holding it this way. What you're going to do is you're working your way just around the loom, alternating what pegs you want to wrap, and switching it around. Again, you're going to be holding it in a different position than I am, so it's not going to be as tricky. Just be careful not to lose it. First row is going to be the hardest because you're obviously like casting it on. So you're just kind of rotating it back and forth. Keeping track of how your yarn is. And what basically vertical stripes are going to do to your project, you see we're actually ending it there. The only difference is it may affect on that worst peg we start and we knit over, it may be a little off there for the first couple times. But now we need the yellow, so we're going to go, excuse me, oh my God, yellow. Alright, so what we need to do now is we're realizing that we have the green here. It came up with. So we got to figure out how we want it to end. So what I'm going to do is find my string, and because I want this starting peg, the yellow, I got to bring my yellow over. Now basically what you're going to find out is depending on how many pegs are on the loom, if the vertical stripes are going to be totally even if you skip 2 around. That's the only tricky part a little bit, is gauging that. But the idea is still there. So what I'm going to do is, because these 2 are green, technically that one's going to be a yellow, and that's kind of where I'm ending. So I might have the stripes messed up a little bit there, and I need my crochet hook. There it is. So then all we're going to do is knit it over like you normally would. Well, actually we got to go around one more time, I forgot. Normally I do this after the brim. So now we have to find our way going back around again. So, which means I've got that one wrapped, but I need my green. You're kind of doing the matching game. But like I said, there's going to be one peg that might be a little tricky and messed up because it's like the starting peg. But really, once you get it all done and follow your rhythm, you won't notice. You shouldn't notice it that much. So now I have my green. Now I'm going back to the yellow. And what you can do now that you're starting going back over if you got thick enough yarn and you're using 2 strands at once, you can start knitting them over as you go to kind of save it kind of unraveling. So I'm going to go back through and I'm going to knit over the ones I've already done where there's 2 on it, just to kind of keep them locked into place for me. Okay. And then that way I can kind of work my way around and I won't get as confused. So it's like you're going to wrap 2, and then I'm going to go over here and wrap these 2 because they're yellow. And then I may pause for a minute and go back, holding those strands. As you see, I'm kind of holding the ones in place and then knitting over the bottom, over the top. Keeping it, like I said, very simple. And then finding where you left off, which I left off with the green. So I go back and I find my green strand. I wrap the next 2. Find my yellow strand. Wrap the next 2. And like I said, I'm just kind of working it around the loom. This is probably what you're going to end up doing. And I'm just going to make it as wide or as long as I'm going to want the brim to be, because I am going to fold this up. It's not going to necessarily be a warm hat because I'm not using 2 strands at once. As I said, this is just for demonstration purposes. Normally, you'd probably be using 2 strands of this weight, or you find yourself some bulkier strands. Like I said, you just want to make sure that however many times you want to go around is on there. I would recommend your first time doing this, use 2 strands, or use a bulkier weight yarn. So that way, it maybe won't be as confusing to have 4 strands going, because it can get confusing. And then we're just pushing these down, and hopefully, we're almost getting back to the beginning. And once I get back to the beginning row, what I'm going to actually do is go off camera and work it a little further down and get ready to do the brim part for you guys so that we can kind of see how it's going to look when it gets closer to the end. And like I said, you may decide you want wider stripes. You may decide that you want skinnier stripes. I mean, you could decide to do every other peg a different color. And that's all we're doing. And this hopefully will create the vertical stripes. I believe this is how I did last time. Sometimes when you guys ask me how to do something, I actually have to redo it because it may have been a while since I've done it. So this is the method I believe I used to do this. Basically, you're wrapping the pegs you want to be a different color. Okay. And as you go along, like I said, you won't be holding it like I am up, so it'll be a lot easier. Like I said, there's going to be one peg here. Because this isn't, I believe because it's not even a number around, you might have one peg that's going to be off and be a slightly different length, which all you have to do then is just make sure it's towards the back of when you're wearing the hat, and then nobody will really know. So I'm pushing these down, and what I'm going to show you, if you can see it, if I get all these down, is that on the inside of the hat, like I said, it's a little tricky to see with all this, you're going to have a lot of yarn on the inside, so the inside of your hat is going to look, if I can hold this right, it's going to look like this, so it's not going to be perfect. But the outside should look pretty cool once we get going. I'll work it a little further so you can actually see it a little better before we actually bring up the bottom to make the brim. So I'm going to go off camera and do that for a little bit, and we'll come back and see where we... So I went a little further because I want this to have like a skinnier brim. So as you see, it kind of still, like I said, looks like the mess, but if you turn it around, you kind of see like it's doing the lines. Again, this is going to look different when you're using 2 strands or a bulkier yarn. It may look like weird now, but I'm only using 1 strand. But now I want to make my brim, so I'm going to do like I would normally do for a brim. I'm going to move these out. I'm moving these towards the front so I don't get caught. And I'm reaching down like we would normally do, to bring the bottom up to the top. It's going to be a little different because of the loops in between are like bigger than what you normally have. Just make sure you get everything up that you can. If you have the extra tails from the beginning, just kind of hide them into the brim as you go around. And then all I'm doing is just kind of bringing up some bottom strands, making sure to kind of get green and yellow if I can. Try to match up a green strand on a green one. I kind of messed up here, so I'm going to switch this around and get a yellow to go on there. So wherever there's green and yellow, you kind of want to have that match up just because I'm going to knit over. And then make sure the greens are colored by green and the yellows are colored by yellow as much as possible. Just look what. That's all I'm doing is bringing the bottom up to the top, and as you can see, it's starting to make it look a little more like a brim that we're used to seeing. And like I said, again, if you were using 2 strands, it would look a lot better than it does right now. I'm only using one strand, so that kind of changes up how it's going to look a little bit. And that's all I'm doing is reaching down in, trying to grab the same strand. So as you can see, I'm trying to make sure yellow goes on yellow and green goes on green. And you're trying to grab from that first row that you did as much as possible. Nice and easy, don't grab it too hard. Just like that, just go to the first row and grab it on. And I'm reaching down, trying to find my yellow. When you get to the last one, I actually have to use my hook to kind of find a yellow. Okay, so that's the brim coming up. As you can see, that already makes a difference in how it looks on the inside. It's actually looking more like the normal brim and giving it a thicker part. So now just go ahead and knit your brim over. And you're going to do the same thing as you just did. You're going to put yellow with yellow, green with green, go all the way around again. Now, because I want this to kind of probably actually work as a hat for my daughter or for an actual kid, I'm probably going to switch up my stitching and actually try to do a tighter stitch all the way to the end. But that's all you're going to do. You're going to keep with the pattern of wherever you have the green, or like I said, the first color you're using. You're just going to go back and forth, and that's going to create your vertical stripes going up your project. And then take it off like you normally would do a hat. I'm sure at this point a lot of you have seen my videos. I've done, I believe, videos on hats. If I haven't, let me know and I'll do a video on a hat. But the same way you would take this off for a normal hat is the same way you would take it off for doing it this way. Just make sure to be careful of all the strands that go with what when you do it. And that's the only thing you have to worry about with this is you got more going on a little bit. So when you take this off, just be a little more mindful of the strands of string that you are grabbing and how you're binding it off. That's all I'm doing. Moving around. Now what I want to do is, because like I said, I'm only using one strand, this time I'm thinking about doing a tighter stitch. So I'm going to actually go around this loom 3 times so that way I can have a tighter stitch, which I think will look better with only using one strand. So I'm going to push this down. It's out of my way, and give you another closer look at the inside. So can you kind of see on the inside how we've got, green or yellow, green? Those are going to be the vertical stripes going up the project. So now what I'm going to do, the tight stitch is where you wrap, each peg will end up getting wrapped 3 times, and then you take the bottom strand over the top. Because I'm only using one strand of each, that's why I'm switching to that stitch for the rest of the project, so that it'll actually make it tighter and hopefully look a little better than if I didn't do it. So I'm going to go off screen and do the same thing, being mindful of where I'm wrapping, make sure the colors match up. But the cool thing is, even though these are going to be vertically up your hat, you can change it around. Like from this point, you could decide, well, I'm going to follow this pattern around for maybe 5, 10, whatever rows, and then switch it, which means wherever you did, if I wanted to switch it, wherever I have yellow, I would wrap as green, and vice versa. And that would almost make it like a checkered pattern going up the hat instead. So you can kind of do that and switch back. But that would require keeping track of your rows and just going from there. But just experiment. That's the way you learn anything, is through experimentation. That's what I've been doing with this. When you guys ask me to make something, sometimes I don't know how to make it, so I have to just grab a loom and play around with ideas I think of how to make it. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to do the tighter stitch going around. It's going to be a little tricky because I am going to be having to go around 3 times and not lose anything off it. So again, for this project I would recommend a bulkier yarn if possible, so that you don't have to worry about wrapping it so many times and going from there. But yeah, I'll do that for a little bit. Tighter stitch is what I'm going to be working on. Do the stitch you're comfortable with, just to practice. Even if the best thing is to practice with just one strand of yarn and get the feel for what you're doing down. You don't have to take the hat off. You can frog the project after, but just practice how you're going to want to hang on to it. I noticed I was setting it down kind of on its side when I was wrapping it because it was easier for me to work the 2 strands. So see if that works for you. So I'll go off camera. I'll do that for a little bit so you can actually see the stitches going up, and then we'll go from there. We'll do a little further just so you can see what the inside looks after you get going. I know it's a little hard to see, but you can tell the difference between the yellow and the green. If you look on the out what would be the outside, you can actually see how we're getting the vertical stripes coming down. So that's all you're going to do, and I'm doing a tighter stitch because, like I said, I'm using only one strand of each color. So this is with using that, and you get, as you can see, getting the vertical stripes going up. It would look a little different, like I said, if I had two strands at once. But again, I just wanted to show you that that's how simple it is to make the vertical stripes. You can decide to use one color and do the brim, and then once you do the brim, add the second color around and do your stripes then. So that's what should look like kind of on the inside as you're working it. And then as you can see, this is giving you your vertical stripes as you go up. So I'm just going to finish this hat up and take it off like we would normally do a hat. I'm assuming most people watching know that. If you don't, just leave a comment below, and I can try to make sure I direct you to a video that will help you. Or if not, look through past videos. And I'm pretty sure I did something about taking a hat off Circle Loom. But if not, I'll do one. But like I said, that's your vertical, and have some fun with it. Play around with how you have the things go. Like I said, you can try doing a checkered pattern, using the same idea of rotating when you change the colors, going on what peg. So just try to have some fun, and I hope you enjoyed this video.